All right.
Yes, exactly. And let's hope for the best that everything will be all right soon.
We are surviving on the hope.
Yes, absolutely. Typically, pandemics have a tendency of extinguishing themselves in about 3 years or so. So I'm hoping by 23 will be back to normal, 22 that's difficult. Let us hope so. Because human tragedy has been huge.
Yes, actually, we have also lost a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, in fact, as I keep saying that I don't know of anyone who hasn't lost someone who is close, dear, knew very well. Almost nobody, anybody I talk to knows somebody very close that is no longer with us. It's been a great.
My university has also lost 6 faculty members.
That's
and that's why it is not easy for us to make it up, because they were all experienced and very good teachers.
very difficult. Very, very difficult. It's overwhelming. I mean, this feels that I wish we didn't have to go through.
Good morning, everyone.
Yes, Tokeer Ahmad.
Yes, ma'am. Madam, can we start, madam?
Yes, please start. We are all.
Honorable Vice Chancellor, Madam, may we start and proceed with the inaugural session of the program with your permission, please?
Yes, please start it. Start.
Thank you,
By all
ma'am.
means.
With due permission from Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Najma Akhtar, ma'am, I'd like to start the opening session of the program. Respected Vice Chancellor, ma'am, Professor Dt Sharma, sir, Professor Sarbajit Banerjee, Professor Yuanbing Mao, all our distinguished speakers, respected Registrar Sir, Dr. Nazim Husain Al-Jafri, Professor Seemi Farhat Basir, Dean Faculty Natural Sciences, Professor Nahid Nishad, Head Department of Chemistry, Professor Tokeer Ahmad, Dr. Ufana Riaz, all faculty members and participants. A very good morning to all of you. On the behalf of the organizing committee, I, Dr. Zeba, formally welcome you all to the Indo-US Webinar and Lecture Series on Advanced Functional Materials. We are highly honored by your gracious presence at this webinar. As per the cultural tradition of Jamia, we begin our program with Tilawat-e-Quran Pak. I'd like to request Sayyid Asim Ali to please unmute his mic and video and recite a few verses of Quran Pak.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم بسم ربك الذي خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم الذي علم بالقلم علم الإنسان ما لم يعلم. उर्दू ट्रांसलेशन। पनाह मांगता हूँ मैं अल्लाह की शैतान मरदूद से। शुरू अल्लाह के नाम से जो बड़ा मेहरबान निहायत रहम वाला है। पढ़ अपने रब के नाम से जिसने पैदा किया इंसान को अलग यानी खून के लोथरे से। पढ़ और तेरा रब करीम है जिसने इल्म सिखाया कलम से इंसान को वह कुछ सिखाया जो वह जानता ना था। इंग्लिश ट्रांसलेशन। I seek Allah's refuge from the accursed shaitan. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Read, in the name of your Lord, who created man from a clot of blood. Read, your Lord is the most bountiful one, who taught by the pen, taught man what he did not know earlier.
Thank you, Asim, for the enlightening recitation. Advanced functional materials are backbone of nanochemistry, which is an interdisciplinary field involving the properties of matter and its application to various areas of science and engineering. Research on advanced materials makes a strong connection between different fields in basic sciences, engineering, and medical sciences. So this webinar and lecture series aims to cover a wide range of interdisciplinary topics dealing with various aspects of advanced functional materials. Now, I request Professor Tokeer Ahmad, convener Indo-US Webinar and Lecture Series, to present the formal Indo-US Webinar Report.
Thank you, Jeba. Honorable Vice Chancellor Madam, Professor Najma Akhtar, respected Professor Dt Sharma, Registrar Dr. Nazim Husain Al-Jafri Sahab, Professor Sarbajit Banerjee from Texas A&M University, Professor Yuanbing Mao from Illinois Institute of Technology, Chicago, United States, Professor Seemi Farhat Basir, Dean Faculty of Natural Sciences, Professor Nahid Nishad, Chairperson of Indo-US Program and Head of the Department of Chemistry, Dr. Ufana Riaz, all invited guests, delegates and students, a very warm good morning to all of you. This grand 9 days Indo-US Webinar and Lecture Series on Advanced Functional Materials is being organized under the aegis of SPARC scheme of Ministry of Education, Government of India. This SPARC scheme on nanomaterials for renewable energy is sanctioned in international collaboration with Texas A&M University and Illinois Institute of Technology, Chicago, United States. The purpose of this SPARC scheme is to improve the research ecosystem of India's higher educational institutions by introducing academic and research collaborations between Indian institutions and best institutions of the world. With this prime objective, MHRD, which is now Ministry of Education, Government of India, has launched this SPARC scheme in 2018. Other objectives of SPARC include the exchange of PhD students and foreign faculty visits in Indian institutions, as well as to organize high-profile annual national and international conferences, webinars, and lecture series. So everyone involved in such schemes are trying their best to fulfill their objectives in COVID-19 pandemic era. The major issue worldwide is the global energy crisis, which arises with the climate change. Hence, the biggest challenge of this era for the scientists is to produce green and renewable energy without using fossil fuels. Water splitting phenomena is considered as one of the promising methods to generate energy in the form of hydrogen as fuel, through which the current and future energy demands can be met out. Thus, in the present SPARC scheme, graphitic carbon nitrides is being used in the photocatalytic water splitting because its non-toxicity and ideal band gap energy for water reduction to produce hydrogen as clean and green energy, which can be utilized as fuel. Therefore, the aim of this webinar and lecture series is to discuss and share the challenges of alternate source of energy by the application of advanced functional materials. Recent developments in nanotechnology have shown the production of much cheaper and more efficient tools for green energy, hydrogen storage, and cost-effective electrodes for hydrogen generation. The following emerging topics will be discussed in this webinar, like designing of advanced functional and structural materials, multifunctional applications of materials, materials for energy conversion and storage, electrochemistry and energy, carbon materials and applications, photo-electro-thermocatalytic hydrogen generation, etc. We have invited the best speakers of the country and United States who are doing extraordinary research in the frontier areas of present demand of globe. Among them, Professor Dt Sharma, an eminent professor of Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, will deliver the plenary lecture, and keynote lectures will be delivered by Professor Ashok Kumar Ganguli from IIT Delhi, Professor Arun Chattopadhyay from IIT Guwahati, Professor A.K. Tyagi from BARC Mumbai, Professor K.V. Ramanujachari from Rowan University, Professor Sarbajit Banerjee from Texas A&M University, Professor Mao from Illinois Institute of Technology, Chicago. All of them are holding key positions in their institutes as well as are the part of the prestigious academic committees and the societies. They have very kindly accepted our request to make this event as the successful program. Today I am happy to share that a very large number of participants registered for this program, which is 1,535. Among them, we have received 440 registrations from faculty members from various organizations, 405 registrations from PhD students, 370 registrations from postgraduate students, and 320 registrations from undergraduate students. In my life, I have ever seen such a huge participation for any academic event. This has happened here because of the good quality speakers and very good image of our university, and it is well known fact that all these speakers are the real experts of their such areas. Since the Cisco WebEx virtual platform can only accommodate only 1,000 participants, therefore we have provided the YouTube streaming link so that all the participants can link with us and can attend all the events associated with the program. The Google feedback forms will also be shared in the chat box of both WebEx and YouTube platforms. All the participants are requested to fill and submit their feedbacks every day using their registered email ID. At the end of the event, e-certificates will be issued based on the attendance of participants. Attendance will be monitored through the submission of the Google feedback forms. This event is funded by the SPARC scheme of the Government of India and administratively supported by our university, Jamia Millia Islamia. The team of this SPARC scheme is doing very hard to meet all the objectives even in this pandemic time of COVID-19. I hope and wish all the participants will carry a knowledge, directions and ideas from this Indo-US Webinar and Lecture Series. Thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you, sir, for presenting a deep insight about the theme of the program through the webinar report. I'd like to request Professor Nahid Nishad, Chairperson of Indo-US Webinar and Head of Department of Chemistry, to formally welcome our notable guests and participants who are present virtually from different parts of the country and abroad.
Thank you, Zeba. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Jamia Millia Islamia, Professor Najma Akhtar, our special guest, Professor Dt Sharma, Professor Sarbajit Banerjee from Texas A&M University, Professor Yuanbing Mao from Illinois Institute of Technology, Chicago, USA, our respected Registrar Sahab, Dr. Nazim Husain Al-Jafri, Professor Seemi Farhat Basir, Dean Faculty of Natural Sciences, Professor Tokeer Ahmad, Dr. Ufana Riaz, conveners of this program, invited guests, faculty members, delegates, and students. A very warm good morning to all of you. It is a matter of great pride and honor that the department is holding a 9 days Indo-US Webinar and Lecture Series on Advanced Functional Materials under the aegis of SPARC scheme of Government of India. On behalf of the whole organizing committee and on my personal behalf as chairperson of this program and head Department of Chemistry, I warmly welcome to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Najma Akhtar, Professor Dt Sharma, Senior Professor of IISc Bangalore, our Registrar Dr. Nazim Husain Al-Jafri Sahab, Professor Sarbajit Banerjee, Professor Seemi Farhat Basir, and all esteemed keynote speakers, Professor Yuanbing Mao from Illinois Institute of Technology, Chicago, USA, Professor A.K. Ganguli from IIT Delhi, Professor Arun Chattopadhyay from IIT Guwahati, Professor A.K. Tyagi from BARC Mumbai, Professor K.V. Ramachari from Rowan University, New Jersey, USA, and all participants of the Indo-US program, please accept the virtual flowers to welcome you all. The Department of Chemistry at Jamia Millia Islamia was established in 1963 and is considered as one of the leading departments of the university. The department is actively pursuing teaching and research program in basic as well as applied and thrust area of chemistry, and has access to a comprehensive range of research facilities. The PG course in material chemistry was started in 1985, followed by the inclusion of 3 more branches of organic, inorganic, and physical chemistry in the PG course in 1992. The department offers the PhD program in inorganic, organic, physical, nano-environmental, and material chemistry, MSc with a specialization in organic, inorganic, physical, and materials chemistry, and BSc honors chemistry. We have been constantly striving towards improvement in curriculum and research activities of the department, which evident from high citation index and impact factor of the department. Research projects of worth several crores have been successfully completed by various faculty members from various national and international funding agencies such as DST, CSIR, UGC, DRDO, DBT, Ministry of Environment and Forest, University of Tabuk, Government of Saudi Arabia. On the basis of teaching and research, the department has received DST FIST and UGC DRS 1 and DRS 2, Special Assistant Program of UGC. The department regularly organizes seminars, conferences, and invited talks by the eminent scientists and researchers from various universities and research institutes within India and abroad. Currently, the department has 18 faculty members which are actively engaged in research and published more than 500 research papers in reputed peer-reviewed journals during the last 5 years. The quality of the work has achieved great breakthrough as some of the faculties have their papers in eminent journals such as Nature, Chemical Reviews, Nature Scientific Reports, Chem Electrochem, Journal of Material Chemistry, Industrial and Engineering Chemistry, Research, Inorganic Chemistry, Journal of Physical Chemistry, Dalton, Langmuir, RSC Advances, News Journal of Chemistry, Materials and Design, and so on. The publication ratio per faculty is as high as 5:1 per year. I am happy to share that 4 faculty members of the department have been figured in world top 2% scientists by Stanford University, USA in 2020. The department has been actively engaged in academic as well as research scheme launched by the government of India from time to time. It is evident from the fact that the department received 2 Gyan schemes sanctioned by MHRT in 2016-17 and 2 MHRT Spark scheme from one which we have assembled today. It is indeed a matter of great pride and achievement for the department. Finally, at the end, I extremely welcome you all again, and I hope that everyone will be benefited by 2 days webinar and 7 days lecture series by the top world eminent scientists through their informative lectures. I look forward for your joyful participation in our webinar. Thank you and have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for presenting a warm welcome to our invited dignitaries and participants. Now, I request Dean Faculty of Natural Sciences, Professor Seemi Farhat Basir, ma'am, and patron of the Indo-US webinar to enlighten the gathering with the faculty remarks.
Good morning, everybody. Respected Madam Vice Chancellor, Professor Najma Akhtar, eminent guests, Professor Dt Sharma from Bangalore, Professor Sarbajit Banerjee from Texas A&M University, Professor Mao from Illinois Institute of Technology at Chicago, Registrar JMI, Dr. Nazim Husain Al-Jafri Sahab, Professor Nahid Nishat, Head Department of Chemistry, Professor Tokeer Ahmad, Professor Dr. Ufana Riaz, invited guests, faculty members, delegates, and my dear students. A very good morning to everybody here, present here. Jamia Millia Islamia is a central university and is a hub of multiculturalism and is home to over 20,000 students who come from diverse social strata in different areas of the country and also from abroad. Our university offers a multi-layered education from the primary education level to research degrees as well as postdoctoral research in diverse academic disciplines and niches emerging areas. We also offer degree and diploma programs through distant education mode. Jamia Millia Islamia has been listed in the World University Ranking by the THE and QS and placed 538th position in the round university rankings. And Jamia continues to strive to be amongst the top 500 global universities. In 2020, NIRF ranked Jamia at number 10 amongst all the universities. Several non-government ranking agencies have ranked us at the top 10 university countrywide. Also, our university has been awarded grade A by NAC in 2015, and we are about to be assessed in a second cycle, and we are expecting a much better grade this time. The word science is derived from the Latin word scientia, which means knowledge. And science is a systematic enterprise that builds and organizes knowledge in the form of explanations that can be tested and predictions that can be made about the universe. It is science that makes people inquisitive and impartial to the inferences that they draw from their research. It helps in creating new knowledge, improving education, and increasing the quality of our lives. And truly, without science, there is hardly any change in the world. So it is science that makes changes happen in the world. The practical impact of scientific research has led to the emergence of science policies that seek to influence the scientific enterprise by prioritizing the development of commercial products, armaments, healthcare, public infrastructure, and also environmental productions. So I think it is imperative that science must respond to societal needs and also the global challenges. Here at Jamia Millia Islamia, we have a very robust scientific environment. There are 7 departments and 6 centers of higher research in the Faculty of Natural Sciences. And all the departments of the faculty are supported by the FIST and the SAP programs of the Government of India. In just the past 1 year, where the world was confronting the situation presented to us by Corona, in just 1 year, more than 1,000 research papers, 135 book chapters, and 11 books were published by the faculty members of science faculty. And a number of patents too have been published and obtained in this faculty. Our teachers of science faculty attended 269 national and international conferences where they presented papers. 75 webinars and extension lectures were organized by the different departments in this 1 year. And we have scientific projects sanctioned from different agencies like DBT, DRDO, DST, ICMR, IUSh, and MHRD. And the number of these sanctioned projects stands today at 63. At present, the amount of extramural grant of the Faculty of Science is about 22 crores. In the last 1 year only, 125 PhD theses were either submitted and / awarded to the sciences scholars. A number of our faculty members have been awarded for their work by various agencies. The SERB Women Excellence Award for 2020 has come to Jamia. A total of 22 awards and recognitions have come to Jamia science faculty members because of the high quality of work that they're engaged in. Our professors are also members of councils of institutes and of scientific and technical committees. And I'm happy to share at this forum that two alumni of natural sciences faculty, Dr. Shubhadeep Chatterjee and Dr. Amit Datta are recipients of the very prestigious Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Award for Science and Technology. Most of the students who have passed out from our university have all got good placements around the world. And it was only last week that 6 research scholars of Jamia have received the prestigious Prime Minister's Research Fellowship, 3 out of which are from the Faculty of Natural Sciences. Today, it is a matter of great satisfaction for me that our leading department of Natural Science faculty, the Department of Chemistry, is holding an Indo-US Webinar and Lecture Series on advanced functional materials as part of the SPARK scheme of the Government of India. On behalf of the Faculty of Natural Sciences as its Dean and as patron of the program, I warmly welcome all the dignitaries, plenary and keynote speakers, and all the participants of this Indo-US program. The Department of Chemistry of the Faculty of Natural Sciences, as the head Professor Naid Nishad has already told us, has become a contributory and leading, it is a contributing and leading department of the university. And I personally am witness to the hard work of the faculty members of this department, which is of course evident from the large number of research publications, a high citation index, and a significant number of research projects and organizing the academic events. I welcome you all again, and I wish everyone will, and I wish and hope that everyone will be benefited by this webinar and lecture series by top academicians and researchers through their plenary and keynote lectures, as well as the other lecture series that will be going throughout this week. I look forward for the active and productive participation of all the delegates. And I would like everyone present today, especially the students, to take maximum benefit of the event and explore new ideas to take further from here. I wish you all to have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, madam, for your motivational words and presenting the faculty remarks. Now, I request Dr. Nazim Husain Al-Jafri, sir, patron of Indo-US Webinar and Registrar Jamia Millia Islamia, to deliver the administrative remarks.
Thank you, Zeba. Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Najma Akhtar, the guest of honor of this program, Professor Dt Sharma from Bangalore, Professor Sarbajit Banerjee from Texas, and Professor Mao from Chicago, USA, Professor Seemi Farhat Basir, Dean Faculty of Sciences, Professor Nishad, Head Department of Chemistry, Professor Tokeer Ahmad, Dr. Ufana Riaz, and other faculty members. All invited guests, participants from India and abroad, and dear students. I am delighted to know that the Department of Chemistry is organizing this 2 days Indo-US webinar and 7 lecture series on very advanced topic of science and technology. Nowadays, energy crisis across the globe and the advanced functional materials are assumed to be potential components to overcome such global challenges. I am sure that SPARK scheme of Government of India will prove as landmark of such research to meet the global issues. Jamia Millia Islamia is a central university. It covers all aspects of schooling, undergraduate, postgraduate, MPhil, PhD, and postdoctoral education. Jamia has 9 faculties, 39 teaching and research departments, and 30 centers of learning and research. Among all the department, the centers, the Department of Chemistry itself is a productive department of the university. In every sector of academics, we attract brightest young minds from all over the country by holding entrance tests in almost every course. The university is doing well in teaching, research, and placement of our students. The university always remains in news for its improvement ranking every year under the dynamic leadership of our Vice Chancellor, Professor Najma Akhtar. On behalf of Jamia Millia Islamia, I warmly welcome all of you, including keynote speakers, teachers, guests, and participants. I hope everyone will be benefited by this Indo-US Webinar and Lecture Series by our eminent speakers through their scientific lectures on burning issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for presenting the valuable administrative remarks. The SPARC research scheme is sanctioned by the Ministry of Education, Government of India in international collaboration with Texas A&M University and Illinois Institute of Technology, Chicago, United States. I therefore request Professor Sarbajit Banerjee and Professor Yuanbing Mao to present their collaborative remarks.
Thank you, Professor Najma Akhtar, Professor Al-Jafri, Professor Basir, Professor Nishat, Professor Tokeer Ahmad, and all of the researchers that are assembled here. It is my great honor on behalf of Texas A&M to participate in this seminar. It is, of course, regrettable that we have to meet online, but it is instead of in person at Jamia. But it is, the good news is that we are able to reach out to over 1,500 participants, as Dr. Ahmad mentioned. So I think a couple of points I would like to make. At Texas A&M, we have a long tradition of working on problems that are global, on problems that affect the lives of people across the world, starting with the work of Norman Borlaug, who pioneered the Green Revolution that led to productivity increases in agriculture across the world. I think the events of the last couple of years have shown how interdependent we are across the world, and also the fundamental role that science plays in solving some of the most formidable challenges that face our planet. And I think if there's anything to be learned, it's that science that is done anywhere helps people across the world. And this is especially a reason for people to work together. And it's also clear that to tackle some of these formidable challenges that we are dealing with, we need to have every hand on deck. We need to tap into every pool of talent that we can possibly access. And so we hope that this seminar will be the beginning of a long relationship as we try to address some of the most challenging problems in energy that also have tremendous implications for the climate. So I'm going to stop here and let Dr. Mao continue.
Thank you. So, Dr. Banerjee already described, a lot of this, the impact of science, impact of the research on science on energy-related studies, and so I want to share a little bit more from my personal experience in terms of the Indo-US relationship from my personal aspect. So first, I'm honored to be part of this Indo-US Webinar and Lecture Series. In the past years, I'm honored and also be so delighted to work with so many Indian-born scientists, bright and dedicated. And the first one I want to mention is actually, with Dr. Sarbajit Banerjee. And when I first started my PhD research work, I received tons of help from him and support from him. And also importantly, my first research paper published in English actually co-authored with him. And then about 8 years ago, I worked with Dr. Jahangir Ahmed as my postdoc. And then about 5 years ago, I hosted Dr. Santosh Gupta from BARC as a Fulbright scholar. And now I'm actually looking forward to host Dr. Li Mai Pasak as my second Fulbright scholar. Hopefully, he will be here later this year. And so with that, during this Indo-US Webinar and Lecture Series, I look forward to sharing with you some of my research work on advanced functional materials, and also looking forward to learning more with you all during this forum in the next few days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Banerjee and Professor Mao, for citing the important information and guiding us about the collaborative research. I request our special guest, Professor Dt Sharma sir from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, to enlighten the gathering with notable scientific address.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zibahak. Let me start extending a very warm welcome to all the participants, in particular Professor Najma Akhtar, Professor Sarbajit Banerjee, Professor Yuanbing Mao, Professor Seemi Farhat Basir, Dr. Nazim Husain Al-Jafri, Professor Nasir Nishad, and Professor Tokeer Ahmad for putting together this wonderful program and compliment the organizing committee. And of course, a very warm welcome to all my colleagues, friends, and young friends in particular, because I think this kind of webinar series are mainly aimed at the student community or community of young researchers. And I'm extraordinarily happy to be a part of it, because my previous experience of attending a meeting organized at Jamia Millia Islamia was absolutely fantastic. And in fact, I had promised at that time the faculty of chemistry department that I'll never say no if they ever invited me again. And here I am once again. And once again, I notice, and I'll just point out that it's going like a clockwork. I see that everybody's talk begins at the right time, ends at the right time. But I promise that I'll try to make mine shorter and save some time for future use. It's always good to save it. Let me make a few very brief comments about the theme, because I don't have to underline the importance of Indo-US cooperation in every sphere of life, and in particular in science and technology and in education. It's been there for a very long time. There's very special relationships between the two countries, and I don't want to discuss that. It has been touched on. The theme of this meeting, Advanced Functional Materials, is also an extremely important one and naturally very close to the heart of all the participants today, and that's why they're here. In fact, often whenever I come across this word or phrase, functional materials, I challenge the person to show me a material that is not functional. You show me a material and I'll show you its function. Material is what defines our lives. Today, the younger people think internet is everything. Let me point out to how important materials has been in the development of human civilization. If you see that often we try to distinguish human beings from other living things, it's very difficult at times to figure out the difference on a lighter note. But one of the things that really distinguishes human beings, and it has been talked about, is the use of tools and making use of materials. Of course, some of the higher primates, and we are learning more and more that even animal kingdom, other living things use tools in various ways. But human civilization, if we look at it, and the progress of human civilization through ages, it has been defined by materials. Think of the Stone Age. We designate an entire epoch in the human history to Stone Age. That it is a part of the growth of the civilization of human species, characterized by the use of stone as a material. Came Iron Age. Once again, it is a material that characterized our progression of human species, its evolution. Then came the Bronze Age. Likewise, sometimes the modern times has been called the Silicon Age, simply because silicon defines this internet, the mobile that many of my younger friends are hooked on to, would not exist if we didn't discover the fantastic properties of semiconductors and silicon in particular, and the tremendous painstaking investment of time, that scientists and technologists and engineers and policymakers have given to the development over many, many years. And later in my talk, I'll show you how slow the progression has been, but that investment has brought us where we are today. And that is why materials plays an extremely important. And as I said, every material is functional. And advanced material really refers to finding out new applications of materials. It's not always that we are discovering new materials, but very often we are discovering materials that are known in certain contexts, but they're fantastic properties in another context, and advancing our knowledge about materials. Of course, sometimes we are also discovering new materials, but the main driving force of science, technology, and society today is due to the understanding that we generate of and discovery of new properties of materials. And that's why one cannot underestimate the tremendous importance of the advanced functional materials. And I was very happy to see that how engaged Jamia Millia itself is in the study of materials. And it was a very impressive account that was given by Professor Basir about the fantastic achievements of the colleagues. It is a pity that we have to meet under these circumstances, very unusual circumstances, circumstances that are extremely tragic and extremely difficult. I do hope, particularly aimed at my younger friends in this, that you remain healthy, stay alert, take care of yourself. Something that I've often said, the way you can contribute to society in this crisis today is by being selfish. What do I mean by that? If you are selfish, if you take care of yourself, you break the chain of infection, and then you don't infect anybody. The best contribution that you can do is to remain selfish and protect yourself. With these few words, let me end my comments in this, wishing the entire organization a tremendous success and compatible with the kind of effort that you have put in putting together a fantastic program, and wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dt sir, for your informative, thoughtful, and wonderful words. Today, it is our great pleasure to have our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Najma Akhtar ma'am, with us to boost up by her presence. Professor Najma Akhtar is an internationally renowned educational administrator and has 4 decades of academic scholarship in educational leadership. She spearheaded International Educational Administrators course for senior officials from 130 countries. She has established and developed State Institute of Educational Management and Training, CMET Allahabad. She worked in various statutory positions such as Controller of Examinations and Director Academic Programs at AMU and led many distance educators capacity building courses at IGNOU. A gold medalist of AMU, she distinguished herself and earned international accolades, including Commonwealth Scholarship. She studied in University of Warwick and Nottingham, UK, and at IIEP UNESCO Paris. Involved in collaborative research work with developing and developed countries, she has been a team leader and has developed younger faculties as independent leaders. Known for innovations in educational governance, she is a pioneer in bringing fully funded long and short-term international programs with diverse funding. Gender equity has been part of most of her projects. Her personal charisma, clubbed with professional acumen in institution building, makes a perfect combination for excellence in education. With these words, I request Professor Najma Madam to deliver the presidential address.
Thank you, Zeba. It's my pleasure to welcome Professor Dt Sharma, Professor of IISc Bangalore, Professor Sarbajit Banerjee, A&M University, Texas, Professor Yuanbing Mao, Illinois Institute of Technology, Chicago, Dr. Nazim Husain Al-Jafri, Seemi Farhat Basir, the Dean Faculty of Natural Sciences, Professor Nahid Nishat, Head Department of Chemistry, Professor Tokeer Ahmad, Dr. Ufana Riaz, faculty members, delegates, and my dear students. I am sure a number of my students are participating in this and getting benefited from these lecture series and webinar. I wish you all a very good morning and a good evening to those who are on this webinar from USA. It's a matter of pride for Jamia Millia Islamia that its Department of Chemistry has taken up the initiative to conduct a 9-day Indo-US Webinar and Lecture Series under the aegis of SPARC scheme of Ministry of Education, Government of India during this pandemic time. It aims at involving maximum number of students and faculty members in academic activities. I'm happy to learn that more than 1,500 participants have registered. It reflects the importance and significance of the program and excellence of plenary and keynote speakers, and of course the image of our university. I remember that I had great interaction with Professor Dt Sharma and Professor Ganguli of IIT Delhi in 2019 Jamia conference. My pleasure to welcome them again to Jamia. Needless to say that other distinguished speakers are also researchers and academicians of international repute. In addition, they enjoy prestigious positions in high-powered committees, and all of them are either editors or are in editorial boards of highly reputed American and Royal Society high impact factor journals. I take this opportunity to welcome them all to Jamia and to this webinar and lecture series. Today's program is under the aegis of SPARC program of Government of India. The SPARC initiative is aimed at developing strong research collaboration between Indian research groups with leading universities of the world and produce high quality research publications and to improve the world reputation and ranking of Indian institutions. In this context, I am happy to share that Jamia has rightly been in the news for its remarkable national and global ranking, which have now gone further up, but I am yet to disclose them because they'll be announced in a day or two. The theme of this program is Advanced Functional Material for Renewable Energy Application. And the research has shown the possibility that such functional nanomaterials can be utilized to resolve the current burning issues, mainly on hydrogen, green, renewable energy, and environmental remediation. The society at large has been highly benefited by functional materials, and research in this area is indeed growing at a faster pace. Developing advanced material requires the expertise of various disciplines of chemistry, physics, metallurgy, and biology. Therefore, the theme of this webinar and the lecture series is a quite thought-provoking and relevant, and is attracting students and teachers from all these subjects. Promotion of such research areas is vital to keep industry and academia at cutting edge with a view to enhancing the nation's industrial competitiveness. Such interactive programs held at academic institutions provide a feasible platform for the younger generation to interact with researchers across various disciplines and enrich their knowledge. Dear delegates, this program has celebrated eminent scientists from premier institutions across the globe. The advancement in various branches of science and technology and the diversity of lectures, as mentioned in the program schedule, shall definitely benefit the participants in designing innovative strategies to develop advanced materials with full potential of traditional knowledge of their respective disciplines. I wish this webinar and lecture series a great success and hope that the participants will be greatly benefited by the insight and fruitful deliberations. I am hoping that the coming of Corona has been a challenge. It has challenged us to work even more than we were doing earlier. And therefore the impact of Jamia on research and the international and national ranking is definitely going to go up, making us feel all the best to the participants and the speakers and all those who are listening to us. And I thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Isi ma'am, for such a knowledgeable address full of insight. Now we are at the end of inaugural session and it is time for formal vote of thanks. So now I request Dr. Ufana Riaz ma'am, who is the co-convener of Indo-US Webinar, to please formally propose the vote of thanks to all the dignitaries, distinguished guests, and delegates of the webinar and lecture series.
A very warm good morning to all of you. It is my pleasure to deliver the formal vote of thanks on the occasion of 9 days Indo-US Webinar and Lecture Series under the Aegis of SPARK scheme. The scheme is of Ministry of Education, Government of India, and we also would like to thank all those who have tried to make this event happen in a highly professional manner. First of all, we are extremely grateful to Honorable Vice Chancellor Ma'am, Professor Najma Akhtar, for her kind permission to organize this webinar and lecture series in the university through online platform. With her generous support, things became directional, proficient, and manageable. She has always motivated us by her kind blessings and extraordinary support. We're extremely thankful to you, ma'am, for accepting our invitation to preside over the inaugural function. Thank you, ma'am. We would also like to thank our eminent scientist of the country, Professor Dt Sharma, for accepting our invitation to attend the inaugural function as our special guest and grace the occasion by delivering a plenary talk. Sir, we are extremely thankful to you for sparing your valuable time in spite of having an academically tight schedule and accepting our invitation to grace this occasion. We are also thankful to our Registrar Sahab, Dr. Nazim Husain Al-Jafri, for his guidance, thoughtful ideas, and valuable support in the preparation of this Indo-US program. Any conference cannot be successful without having star speakers. Hence, we would like to express our sincere thanks and greetings to our plenary speaker, Professor Dt Sharma, and all keynote speakers from India, Professor A.K. Ganguli from IIT Delhi, Professor Arun Chattopadhyay from IIT Guwahati, Professor A.K. Tyagi from BARC Mumbai. The keynote speakers from United States, Professor K.V. Ramanujachari from Rowan University, Professor Sarbajit Banerjee from Texas A&M University, Professor Mao from Illinois Institute of Technology, Chicago, for accepting our invitation to deliver the lecture series in frontier areas of functional materials during their busy schedule. And they have given a finite shape to this webinar, so we owe a big thank you to all the dignitaries. We are also grateful to the valuable suggestions, huge appreciation, and wholehearted support from Professor Seemi Farhat Basir, Dean Faculty of Natural Sciences, in the execution and preparation of this webinar and lecture series. The unconditional support from Head of the Department, Professor Nahid Nishat ma'am, is gratefully acknowledged. She has been very active and supportive of this event. Thank you, ma'am, for supporting us. Our special thanks to the Director of Center for Information and Technology, Professor Kazim Naqvi Sahab, and also for his wholehearted support and guidance to organize this event in a virtual mode, based on Cisco WebEx, and for YouTube streaming to accommodate large number of participants. The help of Mr. Azizullah Khan Sahab, System Analyst, CIT Jamia, is gratefully acknowledged to update the webinar information on Jamia website from time to time. We also express our gratitude to the faculty members and staff of the Department of Chemistry for their generous support. We especially thank Professor Imran Ali, Dr. Sapan Kumar Jain, Dr. Abul Bashar Khan, and Dr. Zeba, and also the dedicated team members of NanoLab, Amir, Huma, Farah, Fazil, Naeem, and Asim. Any successful event needs large participation of delegates, which have shown by more than 1,500 registration. And therefore, a grand thank you goes to them. In the end, we would like to express our sincere gratitude and special thanks to the Ministry of Education, Government of India, for providing financial support through sponsored Spark scheme. Thank you all for joining this event.
Thank you, ma'am, for the formal vote of thanks. Now I seek permission from Honorable Vice Chancellor, ma'am, to close the opening ceremony.
Yes, you may close it.
Thank you, ma'am. Now I request Professor Tokeer Ahmad to proceed with the plenary session.
Thank you, Zeba. Madam Vice Chancellor, may I have your 5 more minutes to proceed with the plenary session, and I would like to introduce Professor Dt Sharma to our participants in your presence. Madam, I know actually you are busy and you have to proceed for your further meetings. May I have, Madam?
It will be my pleasure to be here.
Thank you, ma'am. So, good morning to all of you. I would like to welcome you all in the first technical scientific session of this Indo-US Webinar and Lecture Series. And we are going to start this session with the plenary lecture by Professor Dt Sharma. Professor Dt Sharma doesn't need any kind of introduction, but as a part of the webinar or the lecture series, we would like to I would like to cite some lines in the honor of Professor Dt Sharma. Professor Dt Sharma obtained a 5-year integrated MSc degree in physics from IIT Kanpur in 1977 and a PhD degree in 1982 from Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore. He worked in Zurich, Germany as a visiting scientist during 1984 to 1986. Since 1986, he has been a faculty member at Solid State and Structural Unit of Indian Institute of Science and was the first holder of very prestigious J.N. Tata Chair of IISc during 2017 to 2020. His research interest spans the science of strongly correlated electron systems, primarily based on transition metal compounds and semiconductor nanocrystals, using a wide range of experimental as well as theoretical tools. He has published about 500 scientific papers and holds several patents. Professor Dt Sharma's research citation is 22,142 with an unparalleled H-index of 78. He is an elected fellow of all the 3 science academies and the Engineering Academy of Academy in India and the World Academy of Sciences (TWAS) and American Physical Society. He has received many national and international awards and recognitions, including multiple honoris causa doctorate degrees. He has held a number of academic positions outside of his parent organization, Indian Institute of Science, including many honorary guest visiting professorships such as Gaspard Monge, visiting professor at École Polytechnique, University Professor of Computational Material Physics, University of Vienna, Guest Professor of Physics, Uppsala University, visiting professor at Department of Complexity, Science and Engineering, University of Tokyo, distinguished scientist of CSIR, MLS, Chair Professor at Indian Association of Cultivation of Sciences, Kolkata, Adjunct Professor at CIFR in 2003 to 9 and then 2011 to 14, Honorary Professor at JNC ASR from 2003 to till date, and SMB MCBS, and Distinguished Visiting Professor and Eminent Visiting Fellow at IACS. So with these kind words, I request Professor Dt Sharma to please deliver the plenary talk on a very, very hot topic, miraculous world of materials. Sir, please.
Thank you very much, Professor Tokeer Ahmad, for a really long and detailed and somewhat embarrassing introduction. It looks like that you looked up my citation with an accuracy of ±1 this morning. It's really kind of you. But you know, in animal kingdom, you'll see that the length of the tail should never be larger than that of the animal itself. Likewise, that the length of the citation or introducing a speaker should be longer than the talk itself. And I was worried that that theorem would be violated because we were talking for such a long time. But thank you very much for the very kind introduction. I hope my voice can be heard clearly. Is that okay? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah?
yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I need to be able to share the file. I have not been given the permission to share yet. So can the person who's controlling give me the sharing file control? Because I'm not able to share content as of now.
Narku, sir. Sir, who presentation?
So while that is getting adjusted, let me give a few introductory remarks and tell you the background, because in some sense, Professor Tokeer Ahmad is totally responsible for what I'm going to talk. Because when he asked me to give a talk, and I chose a scientific subject on which we were working recently and excited about it and fitted the thing, he was very kind. He never said no. He said, yes, that's wonderful. It will be very nice. But can you talk about something more introductory, more popular lecture, because we have a large number of students. And every time I hear there will be students, and he said there will be even undergraduate students, a large fraction of undergraduate students. So he persuaded me to talk about much more general and a popular lecture. But I'll try to give you a glimpse of different kind of materials without going into detail of telling why they have the kind of properties they have, but tell you the extraordinary properties they have, such that it sort of fires your imagination and gets you excited and draws you to the same field which has kept us excited for so long. So this talk is more aimed at my younger friends and less at my colleagues. So I start with an apology to all my colleagues that it is going to be somewhat trivial for them, possibly. Okay, so let me start by showing you my screen, and I hope you're able to see my screen. Can somebody confirm that you can see my screen as well as?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes, we can.
as well as the title. Wonderful. So I'm going to talk about the miraculous world of materials. Obviously, it's, as I told you, materials have been miraculous and shaping the world from time immemorial. So there is not going to be any way I can cover the spectacular properties that have defined mankind in its progress. But I'll take every example from modern times to tell you how wonderful, how counterintuitive, how exciting properties can be seen in different kinds of materials, leading up to a particular material that I'll talk about a little more, which is of very recent vintage and something that you're interested in. But I'll not be talking about the why of it, but I'll show you what of these materials. That is the purpose of this talk. For example, if I start talking about polymer materials, all of you have heard of polymer materials, and they're a nuisance in terms of plastic bags, for example, creating havoc to the ecology, environment. It's a terrible thing, but also it has many, many extraordinary properties. The reason that they are a menace today is because they're being used so extensively. They're extremely useful also. The particular polymer that I'm going to show you examples of and tell you why it is so exciting is this super absorbent polymer. And so there, what happens is, think of this. Okay, let me show you. Okay, I have to get back my pointer, I guess. Otherwise, I cannot start possibly. Okay, yes. This video. So in this video, what I'm going to show you is, there's also known as diaper polymer for obvious reasons. This is the polymer that you can see here, and I'm pouring water into it. And you saw there was very little polymer and a full of water that I've poured, and you see what has happened. The entire amount of water that was poured into that polymer got absorbed by the polymer and sort of solidified and held inside. And you could see the volume of water that it can absorb is 10, 20, 30 times more than the volume of the actual polymer. This is the kind of absolutely miraculously that it absorbs and holds in water. And this kind of polymeric things, normally they are known to be highly insulating, but we can make many electronic materials out of it. We can make them conducting, we can make them semiconducting, we can make them insulating. And because they're polymer, they can be bent. And in fact, there's a lot of applications that are coming up in the near future where we'll be using polymer for various kinds of, let me try to see if I, yeah, is this part coming on the screen, covering part of the top of the screen? I don't know how to get rid of that. Okay. Anyway, let me continue and maybe. Okay. Yeah. So the polymer can be bent so that these are making what we call the wearable electronics. So in the future, we're thinking of human beings wearing polymeric electronics on their body, which will harvest the body temperature to power themselves. So this will be automatically powered. You don't have to generate power separately for them. The display can be bent. And as you can see, Samsung here, with actually, they have prototype materials. There's a mobile that can be flexed, bent. You can have roll them up and carry them in your pocket and do what you want, which is really unthinkable because we have been taught to think of electronics in terms of silicon architecture, which is extremely brittle and inflexible. But today we have the possibility of flexing the electronics because we have been able to make polymers conducting, semiconducting, and of course, insulating. There is some difficulties I'm facing. Okay. This is shape memory alloy, another video. You saw that spring. The spring is now being distorted heavily, totally out of shape, as you can see, rotating, twisting, doing all kind of very, very nasty things. And once I have completely bent it out of shape, as you can see here, what we're going to do is to gently heat it up, as you'll see in a moment now. And once we start to heat it, the reason we call it shape memory alloy, as over here, you'll understand it right away, that as we start to heat, see what happens magically. The spring remembers the shape that it started off with and goes back exactly to that shape, such that as if no distortion was given. That means this is an alloy which memorizes its shape. Even if you distort it just drastically, it can get back to that shape if you give it slight amount of energy. What is the use of this kind of material? This kind of material has actually totally changed our life in a spectacular ways, in many different ways. I'll give you only a few examples. You see these tube-like things that are here made of this shape memory alloy. These are the stents. You may have heard about stents being put inside the arteries and veins of human body when they get clogged up. The way it is done is that you want to put something inside these arteries and then open it up such that the arteries remain open. But in order to get it inside the artery, it cannot go into the open state. What you have to do is to collapse into a very compressed state. For example, this object that you can see here, let me pick up the laser pointer once again, that this object here is very small. This is the object, when given the right kind of excitation, will become as big as this one. So you make it contracted like this, push it into the arteries, and then warm it up slightly so that it can expand and become a stent of the right size that you want. These shape memory alloys are also used extensively for dentistry, in robotic arms, in surgeries, even in making glass frames, spectacle frames. So they're being extensively used due to this very surprising property that you can bend them, twist them, and do what you want. But then they can come back to the original shape because they remember that original shape. And shape memory alloys have really revolutionized our life. Some other miraculous materials. This material over here is a powder. It's an oxide powder V2O3. And such black powder, if you remember in school, you were taught that something is metal and something is insulator, and the difference between a metal and an insulator was defined that metal is shiny, insulator is not shiny, metal is malleable and ductile, insulator is brittle and not ductile. So from all that characteristic, this powder here looks like an ideal insulator. This powder has this fantastic property. And what I'm showing you is resistance as a function of temperature. Because also you know a metal is something that has low resistance and insulator has high resistance. That is the most fundamental property that comes to mind when you talk about metal or insulator. This material at low temperature, let's say about 100 Kelvin, has a resistance that is about 10 to the power 8 ohms, that is 100 mega ohm resistance for some particular shape and size of the sun. And the same material, if I heat up to 180 Kelvin, becomes such a low resistance. So you see that the resistance is changing by a million-fold, going from 10 to the power 2 to 10 to the power 8, just by changing the temperature. It is like taking an insulator and converting it into a metal with a huge change in its properties. And that's why this has been often called as that this part, it's copper-like, it conducts as well as copper. At this end, it is as insulating as glass. And it is the same material that just by changing slightly the temperature can go from a metal to a glass-like. And that can of course be put to many uses, but it's also spectacular. And many, many decades we are spending, even today we are trying to understand its property, why it happens the way it happens. And it has remained one of the favorite questions of scientists. They keep going back to every decade trying to understand this spectacular property. And so I thought that I should familiarize you with this particular kind of examples. Of course, not only metal to insulating. You can have a metal. Again, I'm showing you resistance here and temperature here. Typically, as I lower the temperature, metal's resistance decreases gently. But then there are some metals which, when you reduce the temperature, suddenly at one particular temperature, its resistance goes all the way to 0. And this state where its resistance has gone to 0, we call it the superconductor. So metal can become a superconductor. There are also examples where an insulator, starting as an insulator at one temperature, would become a superconductor at a low enough temperature. It is like, this is the typical road condition where if you are trying to drive a car, you're getting scattered and stopped by other cars, you cannot move fast. And that is the situation with normal metal. At high temperatures, like having more traffic here, more scattering, getting stuck with other vehicles. But as you go to below this transition temperature, what you call the DC, the transition temperature, suddenly there is no obstacle in your path, and I can move as freely as you want, becoming in this superconductors. This Meissner effect, let me see if it doesn't start. So I have to again change over to the. Let me see if I can, this is, okay, so what I'm showing, this is a superconductor at a certain temperature, looks like an insulator, and this is a magnet. Now I'm cooling it down, putting liquid nitrogen, and you see that magnet levitates on top. And it's freely floating in the air because there's a superconductor there, you can see, and it can be, and there's liquid nitrogen. As long as liquid nitrogen is there, it will be behaving that way. Now I can pull up that superconductor, put it here. Now it will start to warm up and it will become a metal. And as it becomes a metal, you can see that the material drops down, magnet drops down on top of it. So that means that I can levitate a magnet on top of a superconductor when it is a superconducting state. And if I take it out of the superconducting state, it will come down and rest on top of it. And this particular thing can be used actually to make a magnetically levitating any object. For example, if in a train. This example is not on a superconductor though. It is using magnets only to float this train, but there can be also this magnetically levitated trains can be made with the use of superconductors. And then you can imagine that this will have no friction and it will be driven very fast and automatically, and it can be driven not only fast, but using very little energy, because all that you have to overcome is the air friction, resistance of air, but the friction coming from the track, which otherwise dissipates a lot of energy, because much of the fuel or the energy consumption to drive any vehicle of this kind would be reduced drastically. That's very exotic material. So you don't have to think of only exotic materials. Even, as I said right in the beginning, any material that you can think of has some interesting properties. For example, if you think of soot, the soot that you find coming out of a diya, if you light a diya, or from the chimneys, the black soot that comes out, that contains various forms of carbon. Carbon itself can come in many different forms. And what I'm writing over here is 3D, it's a three-dimensional form of carbon. This is two-dimensional form of carbon made from this one. This one is actually nothing but many, many layers of carbon, graphene put on top of each other. Each of these dots you are seeing is actually a carbon atom. And the stick that you're seeing is a bond between carbon atom, making this hexagonal pattern. And this hexagonal pattern makes a beautiful two-dimensional sheet. If you put many of these two-dimensional sheets one on top of the other, you get the well-known graphite. And that graphite can peel off, make it a graphene. And that graphene, you can roll up and stitch it together by many techniques to get what is known as nanotubes. These nanotubes can come in various forms, depending on how you roll, how many you roll, so on and so forth. And also this kind of structure, only with carbon atoms, you can stitch them together to form a ball, a buckyball, a football-looking object. And there are many different ways of, again, making a closed object of that kind, and that's called the foolery. The class is called foolery. So this is a three-dimensional object. This is a two-dimensional object. As you can see, this is a one-dimensional object because it's closed on these two directions, but in one direction it's long. And this is closed on all three directions, so it's a zero-dimensional object. And these objects, just all made from carbon, have spectacular properties, as I'll be showing. This is the different ways that nanotube can be formed. Let's not worry about that. Carbon, you can take this nanotube and make couple them together, many of these nanotubes make a cable by joining them together. And for cross-section, let's say 1 square millimeter. You know, millimeter is very small. It's 1 square millimeter cross-section. You make a wire out of it. You can, that wire, that cable can hang 6.4 ton weight from it. It is the toughest material, the strongest material that we know of. You know, in fact, it is so strong that one thinks of Arthur C. Clarke, the very famous science fiction writer, had visualized one of the best way of exploring space is to make space stations which can go up and down. And using these tremendously strong cables running up to some space station, and supplies can be sent by using the space elevator going up and down. That was a fiction when he wrote. He didn't know about carbon nanotube, but carbon nanotube has the ability to carry so much of weight that you can actually, and it has so lightweight that it can make such applications feasible one day in the future. In fact, the best known material that we have been using, high carbon steel, it is specific strength is something like 154 kilonewton meter per kilogram. Whereas I don't know if you can see the number up here from nanotube, the specific strength you can achieve is 48,000 compared to 154. Right? Now you can see 48,000 kilonewton meter per kilogram. Sorry. Okay, so it is the best known specific strength material that exists today. And it is already being used extensively, the various carbon materials. Graphene, for example, and nanotubes also can make the aircrafts become lighter, and it's already being used. It's being used in flexible electronic materials because it has very interesting electronic properties. Since it's such a strong and tough material, it's being used in all kinds of tennis rackets, in making lightweight bicycles. All professional bicycles have extensive amount of graphite or graphene generated materials in it. And you can also make, it is very useful in making super thin solar panels because it can be also made to absorb light very effectively. You can also make the lightest material because carbon is one of the lightest, one of the lowest Z atomic number material. You see, it's an aerogel made with graphene, which is being supported on this thin fibers of this particular object that you see if you go walking, a grass flower. Of that, these fibers that are coming up, they don't even bend when it supports such a large object, simply because it's so extremely light. And yet, it is mechanically stable. So you can make lightest material with highest strength, and that has the number of applications that are possible are really enormous. Then, changing topic and talk about mobility. Another aspect that I want to show you about these carbon materials. Mobility is basically talks about electron transport. What do I mean by that? Think that I have racetrack like this, different racetracks, and I'm going to put different materials, and I want to take electrons from here to there. Because you know, everything that we do, all electronic materials require electron to be transported from one place to the other. Why should the electron go from one side to the other? Because I apply a potential difference. When an electron finds, imagine this is about 1 centimeter, and I apply a potential. I have a battery, and I'm going to apply 1 volt across it, such that an electron released from here will try to go to that side because its energy will get to it. The question that I'm asking after 1 second, how far the electron will go? Remember, this is 1 centimeter, I'm applying 1 volt. It depends on the material I use. And now you see that if I want fast electronics, I would like to have highly mobile materials. In fact, highly mobile or electrons which can move faster are required not only for fast electronics, but for many applications because I need to move the electrons very quickly. Otherwise, bad things can happen to the electron. Accidents can happen to the electron. So even if I have solar cells, the reason you need solar cell, the silicon highly pure, is to make the electron ability to move far quickly such that I can get these electrons that are generated inside the silicon outside for driving the light that I have at home. So let me ask that question and say after 1 second, how far the electron? As I said, it depends. Some electron on this track, depending on the material, will go this far. And if I have very good material, it will go this far. How much is this far? And what are the materials? For example, silver. It's one of the very good metal. So it must be very mobile electron. In 1 second, if I apply 1 volt potential, it can go 56 centimeters. Silicon that I talked about, with which our solar cell are germinated, can go 1400 centimeters, much more. Indium antimonide, it is one of the best materials with highest mobility. It can go have electrons go 77,000 centimeters in 1 second, only with 1 volt applied. Carbon nanotubes can go 1 kilometer, 100,000 centimeters, 1 kilometer in 1 second. And graphene can, the electrons can go 2 kilometers in 1 second. Again, you can see that carbon that you have known from day one. In fact, graphene is what you use even before when you are learning to write. Your pencils are made from graphite material. And the trace that comes on your paper often, if you're using a graphite pencil, is this graphenes that are coming onto your symbol. And that has this spectacular property that we didn't know about till it was discovered by undergrad, and they of course go to the university. Such materials are going to transform the world in many ways. In fact, nanomaterials in particular, I've talked about these nanomaterials, the ones that are made from graphene. Let me give you some examples of other kinds of nanomaterials. In fact, nature uses nanomaterials. This is nothing but a lotus leaf, and many of you might have heard about the lotus leaf effect. If you see droplets of water on the lotus leaf, it doesn't seem to stick. You can see it rolls off, and the ability to roll off is already shown by the fact that it's looking like a round drop. The reason it's a round drop is at the point of contact, it does not like to wet the material. For example, if you put a water droplet on paper, you'll find that it spreads because it likes to stick to the water and make the contact area as much as possible. Here, it seems it doesn't like to make contact, so it minimizes the contact and making the water as round as possible. We can make, and these actually keep the lotus leaf clean, because when they roll off, they collect all the dirt that is sticking on the lotus leaf like this and go off, and the lotus leaf remains clean. We can make, the reason the lotus leaf is this way is because it has these nanostructures that are shown over here, and you can make such nanostructures artificially. And here you can see one such surface that has been created, and you can see the water droplet on top of it, even more round than here. You can see that the water does not like to make contact, has minimized the contact with the material because I have made this super hydrophobic. It is something that repels. And that has been put to many, many use, and that can be mentioned, including in the rear view mirror in the cars, etc., so that when it rains, water doesn't stick to it for the physical. Of course, we can make exactly the opposite, super hydrophilic, where the water, you can see as soon as I put, just spreads completely and makes a thin film on top, because I have made it exactly opposite structure of this one. Then I can take these nanomaterials and arrange them. This is a beautiful opal, a semi-precious gemstone. It has these beautiful colors. These colors are actually colors not coming from the material, but it's diffracting light, and light interference is giving rise to color. And that is known in the insect world also. This wing of this beetle has this beautiful color. It's not because it's green in color or emitting green light, but it is causing an interference of the light falling on it, giving the green and intensity that we can perceive. And we can arrange material today artificially in any kind of structure that you want. And we can arrange them in such a way that even it will become completely invisible, so that the light will not penetrate to go around it like this, such that you can make invisible materials. These are called metamaterials, where the material is arranged in such a way to interfere with the wave property of the visible light, to manipulate visible light in a way so that it can become invisible. Not only visible light, you can make it invisible to radar also at the radar wave. What I'm showing you over here is truly a nanomaterial, a transmission electron microscope picture of it. And there are these dots that you're seeing. These dots are actually columns of material, columns of atom with gaps between them, the next column. So this is a plane of atoms that you see here. Beautiful. So we are able to make such materials. We are able to arrange such materials. But why should I want to make such materials? What is the advantage? In a macroscopic world, if I take a large red ball, break it into smaller red ball, it just remains a red ball. I mean, if you think of it gold, it doesn't matter how much small I make it, it is always a gold particle. It looks like a gold. But if I break it down such that it's now in nanometric size, then a gold will begin to change its color so that its physical and chemical and every property begins to change when I change the size. So having control on the size gives me this tremendous power out of the same material, getting all different kind of properties. This is of course just an illustration. Let me show you a real life example here. And this is the example that I think Professor Seemi Farhat of IIT Delhi had created many, many years ago. Here what he had put is cadmium selenide, one particular material, cadmium selenide, just so. But of different particle size. The cadmium selenide particles here are larger in size, and here progressively making it smaller and smaller, and it's the smallest size. And what I'm going to do is to look at the color they give out when I shine UV light, because they're fluorescent materials. So they'll give us some kind of, they're luminescent materials. When I shine light on it, this is in the normal visible light. I'm going to shine UV light on this one, and you can see it gives beautiful blue light. Cadmium selenide. The same cadmium selenide as different size gives me green, another shade of green, yellow, and red. So I can get the same material to give me any color that I want out of one single material just by controlling its size. And the reason this happens is, of course, as you know that this material, the way luminescence happens, let me tell you just one short discussion of why, though I said that I'll not talk about the why, but here I'll tell you, it's a semiconducting material. So we basically have valence bands here, which is filled with electrons. And these are the conduction bands, which are completely empty. So there's this band gap, which characterizes semiconductor or an insulator. So it's not a metal. These are where the electrons are. This is where there are no electrons, but electron can go there. What I'm going to do is to take one electron from here and put it up there. How can I do that? I have to give energy, right? I mean, this electron has to go up in energy because energy increases that way. So I provide it energy by providing it some photon, high energy photon. So now I have a hole here where the electron was, and there's an electron there. But this electron can come down very quickly, and this hole can go up very quickly by using these other states. Once they come to this state, this electron cannot trickle down anymore. This hole cannot trickle up anymore. So the only way they can combine is by jumping down. When they jump down, they have to give out, the energy conservation requires that they give out a photon, a light, such that that light will carry the band gap energy. And that is exactly what happens. And that is the luminescent color that I see. And if I'm able to change the luminescent color, that means I'm being able to change the band gap. So I can tune the band gap by changing the size. So if this was the band gap, I'm either, this is the valence band with a hole there and an electron there. And if I want to change it, I have to either push the conduction band up or push the valence band down or do both simultaneously. And this is exactly what we do by changing the size. How do I know? I can test it. I can do the experiment. How can I measure the band? Measuring the band gap is very easy. I'll do the reverse process. What I'll do, I'll come with photons which have energy that are small, only this much. That means this photon cannot take an electron from here and put it there. So this photon cannot be absorbed because you see that is the smallest energy I need to make an electron excited. Because electrons are here, no electron there. To take an electron from here to there, I need this much energy. This photon has less energy. So I increase the photon energy a little, it still cannot carry. As soon as my photon energy becomes equal to that, I'll create an electron going up there. That means that photon will get absorbed. So I'm going to bring in photon and continuously try increase the energy of that photon and see where the photon begins to get absorbed. Otherwise, the photon will get transmitted. This is the experiment that we do. This flat part is where the photon is getting transmitted. In this direction, I'm plotting absorption of photon, and this direction, photon energy. You can see for this material, it didn't get absorbed till photon energy was very high, and then it started absorbing. That means it has a band gap that is this much. Whereas this material, this first red one, started absorbing right here. So it has a band gap here, which means that the band gap is changing from here to here. And let me tell you that all this material is one material, zinc oxide. And I am only changing the size of the zinc oxide nanomaterial and tuning the band gap contents. So we can change the color, we can change all properties and make such beautiful colors by choosing the right material. And of course, colors can combine. And when different colors combine, I can make white light, and that is the kind of white light that can be generated. And these are the kind of white lights that are going to illuminate your house, because these consume very low energy and can give very high efficiency light. And in fact, this kind of semiconductor nanomaterials are being used for high definition color TVs already. Many of the color TVs today come with these nanomaterials for the light emissive purposes. And of course, lighting application of this kind. How well can I organize? I said that I can make them, but can I place these small materials? They're so small. I cannot hold them with my finger. I cannot hold them with a pencil. How can I manipulate them? We can manipulate them. I'll only show you examples. The extreme example of how well we can manipulate them. And this is here where you can see that these little dots, this is the side view, this is looking from top. Each of these dots is actually an iron atom. And that this surface is a copper surface, and you have arranged in a particular way iron atom next to each other like this, giving rise to what is called a quantum quarrels, because it changes the properties of this copper surface. You can see the copper surface here looks mono, and here there is again pure copper, but looks totally different because I have modified the copper surface by putting this confinement of irons all around. But the main thing that I'm trying to point out to you is that I can how manipulate down to the atom level. I can place an atom where I want. Atom and molecule. For example, this doll that we see is actually carbon dioxide molecules placed next to each other in a systematic way, making this carbon dioxide man. Here, again, iron has been arranged on copper, and kanji characters, Chinese, Japanese characters, it says atom. Here, xenon atoms, these are each is a xenon atom arranged on nickel. This was created by a company. I cannot disclose the name of the company because it's a top secret. Of course, that's a joke. If you pay attention, you'll see the name of the company is exactly what they have written using xenon. So they can place atoms where you want exactly as the. But why do I want to control at such small length scales? What is the purpose? What do I gain? The kind of gain is what has led to the revolution that you hold your mobile today, which has so much of power. All of them have processors. Look at the processor, how they're all processors, the computer chips have basic element as transistor. Each transistor takes some space. The question is, what is the size of that transistor? In 1971, the smallest transistor that you could make was 10 micron in size. And on a processor chip of more or less the same size all through the years, we could put 2,300 transistors. As we kept making the transistor size smaller, starting from 10 micron down to 180 nanometers, the same size processor now starting from 2,300 now can have 42 million transistors. And that's the reason why the power of competition has gone up so much. But that was in 2000. Since 2000, you see that the feature size, it has gone from 180 nanometers in 2016, 22 nanometer. In fact, today, that's a reason the number of transistors per chip have gone up enormously, as I was showing you before. And today, the chip size, the transistor size, has gone to sub 10 nanometer technology. So that much smaller size gives you so much more power. And that's why this revolution that has come, which is so familiar. In fact, when I was young, in my student days, IBM 360 was one of the most powerful computers. And this computer, you can see how big it is. This is the two men standing here. The computer took the whole room. Let me tell you about its power. That had 20 megaflop of calculation power. My laptop today has 7,000 megaflop of calculation power. And the size of my laptop is, of course, extremely small. This larger 360 models had 8 megabytes of RAM. How much memory it had? My laptop has 16 gigabytes. That has a main storage of 1 megabyte. My computer has more than a terabyte of memory. So you see, the miniaturization or ability to control at small size has given the revolution that we have got so much used to. In fact, to show you the increase in the computing power 250 times from there, in the memory 2000 times, and in the storage device, it's 1,000 billion times. Here is actually a picture of one of the early storage devices. This storage device could store 5 MB of data. And that needed for transporting a crane and had to have a specially chartered plane to fly it from the IBM's to wherever it had to be delivered. And that is only 5 MB, as I said. Today, your mobile has many more MB, in fact, gigabytes of storage there. And the way this can be done, and I'll be skipping a few things now because I've taken a little more time than I wanted to. We can make transistors using one electron, controlling just the behavior of one electron. And this is what is shown over here. This is a device, there's an aluminum, this is the gate where I'll be applying voltage and ionize this tellurium atom that I've implanted in silicon, making this electron move towards this, and by that, allow this aluminum to that aluminum conduction to happen whenever the atomic level of this tellurium matches with the Fermi energy. And and that is shown. Okay. This is again a video. Basically, it moves up and down, and then it flows through. Current can be controlled by moving these levels up and down by applying a voltage here. Just controlling one electron. Similarly, we can now changing to different kinds of examples in the nanomaterials, molecules. This molecule looks like a car if I think of these as wheels, because they can actually rotate around the axis. And this is the body of the car. And given the right kind of stimulus, they can rotate. And we can make them rotate all in the same direction, then the molecule will move like this. And let me actually show you an example of that. You can see that in this case, I've put these molecules in a way they are all rotating in the same direction so that there will be a linear motion. And you can see that here, this is the molecule and I'm tracking it and it's moving systematically, starting from here, ending up somewhere there. It started from here, ended up. In this particular example, I've put the two wheels against each other. This tries to move it this way, this tries to move it this way. So then this cannot move at all. And this is what you'll see now happening, that this will try to move but cannot move away from its place because the wheels are misaligned. If I now put the wheels in a way, if I put the wheels in a way that this set will move this way, that set will move that way, then it should be rotating. And that is what I'll be showing here. This one is rotating continuously. Yeah. And in fact, I can track its trajectory and it will be moving like this most of the time because of the way we put the wheels on this molecule. Now, for the last 2-3 minutes, I'll just quickly talk about this wonder material of today, which is the one that I would have talked about if I were to give a proper scientific. But this is something that is causing enormous amount of excitement in the energy sector, and that being a major theme of this particular meeting today, I will be talking about a little touch on it. This is a completely new generation of optically active materials, and it's being looked at among many other spectacular uses, a photovoltaic material. And I'll show you, and it's competing with, not quite competing with, but supplementing the silicon technology that we have today. And we've been working on it, it's supported by many, but since I'll not be showing you any result from our particular work, I'm not going to spend time. What I'm showing you over here is actually, this direction is the year. And in this direction, the solar cell efficiency. Of course, we want the efficiency to go. And there are different colors and symbols you can see here. Each color and symbol is actually tracking the technology, how the efficiency is increasing. So you see, as time goes by, slowly the efficiency climbs up. Okay, for every technology, efficiency climbs. So let us not look at all different technologies. Let us look at the technology that is commercially available, the silicon technology, and that is given by the silicon technology, polycrystalline silicon, is this open blue squares. And you can see how slowly it is increasing. This is the single crystal silicon technology. Since it's crowded, let me surround the technology's growth by this ellipse. And this major axis of the ellipse is actually tracking how the efficiency on an average has gone up. You can see starting from 1975 or so, starting with an efficiency slightly over 10%. Now we have reached in the order of about 24% in this particular case. And you can see we are sitting here about 26, 27% we have reached with the single crystal. And here is the polycrystal, which is sitting close to 24%. Oops. Right? Now, I'm going to show you another material, this wonder material, which is here. It is discovered, its properties are discovered essentially around 2010, but in the last few years, it's gone up very quickly, and you can see I've expanded it here. And in this slide, I'm comparing it with the silicon technology. Silicon technology took 40 odd years to come to increase the efficiency, which this particular material has achieved in less than 10 years, and has come to the efficiency that is equal to the silicon technology. So it's really spectacular growth of this material that has given rise to this. Only efficiency is good. Actually, it's much more than efficiency. You know, all the time we want to make the silicons, the solar cells thinner and thinner so that the weight is less, so that it can mount it everywhere. But in order to make it thin, it must absorb very efficiently. And that gave rise to new technologies called dye-sensitized solar cell, that with 10 micron thick layer, active layer, you can do the solar cell. Then we went to solid state dye-sensitized solar cell that was about half a micron or 1 micron thickness. Extremely thin solar cells based on similar technology with improvement came to about half a micron. Whereas this new material, its absorption power is so strong that you can make the solar cell less than half a micron thick. Not only that, this dye-sensitized solar cell that I talked about, there the material, that photoactive material which absorbs the photon, is normally a thin layer. But the electron and hole that you generate is conducted by, on one side, electron is conducted by titanium dioxide. On the other side, you put another hole transporting material so that they get separated, because in general, the material is not good for, it's not good mobility. So you need, but it turned out that this material did not make titanium dioxide, and this was proven by replacing titanium dioxide with aluminum oxide, which does not conduct electrons at all. And it was found that the efficiency didn't go down at all. So that got rid of these things altogether. And it turns out that this is not only absorbs very well, but it also has high mobility for electrons and protons. What makes it so good? As we know, what we need to make a good solar cell material is that it must have good absorption of light. It must give rise to slow recombination of the electron and hole that is generated, because if it recombines very quickly, then of course you won't get electricity outside, it gets recombined inside. And it must give rise to high voltage also, because the power that it generates is voltage multiplied by the current. And on all those counts, this particular material or this family of materials, which are known as hybrid perovskites, because it has an organic part, CH3NH3, methyl ammonium, and an inorganic part, lead halide, put in the perovskite structure. And so this material has been known again, but nobody knew how fantastic it is. It has almost ideal band gap, a little less than 1.6 volt. It has an absorption coefficient which is extremely high. It has very long carrier diffusion length, and it is very high open circuit voltage, giving rise to very high power. But is that all? I'll end with this question, because it turns out that it's not all. This has such fantastic, exciting properties due to the presence of this organic molecule that can rotate, that can freeze, and that couples to the behavior of this inorganic cage, and in coupled manner they behave in a way that is so surprising that we're discovering newer properties each day, which makes it interesting beyond also the solar cell application. With that, telling you a whole series of different exciting materials, their properties, why they're exciting, and the excitement to understand why such properties exist, where we spend all our time. Let me hope I have been able to share some of that excitement with you and end my talk thanking you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for very informative and wonderful lecture, sir. And most of the participants are giving their comments and giving you thanks for your lecture. Actually, I know, sir, you have to rush to your meeting. But some of young scientists have raised some questions, sir, if you allow.
Please.
Yeah. Sir, one participant has asked one question: which metals are used to make a shape memory alloy?
Oh, these are very complex alloys made of many materials, manganese, nickel. Some of the transition elements are there, but many others. In fact, if you want, just give a Google search and it will tell you all the compositions immediately. These are multi-component alloy systems.
Yes, sir. Sir, are there any organic superconductors?
Oh, there are. There are organic superconductors, several of them, which are again a very surprising thing, because we didn't expect organic materials to be superconducting, particularly because metals, and we associate superconductivity normally with metals, and metals we associate with broad band, but organic materials have very narrow band, and yet they can show superconductivity, and that's again a totally fascinating field of study.
So we are getting more compliments rather than the questions from your lecture. Yeah. One more question from sir, our undergraduate student. How far can TMD materials go if 1 volt potential is applied?
What? Sorry, I didn't get it.
How far can TMD material, TMD?
Okay, transition metal dichalco generates. Yeah. So basically the mobility again from MOS to etc. can be made very high. It's not as good as graphene. I don't remember the number, but they're spectacular. But also I must point out that much of mobility improvement is technology driven, in the sense technology driven and science driven. Zinc oxide, which is a 3-dimensional material, not 2-dimensional. If you make it extremely pure, it has been shown by a very close friend of mine, Kawasaki, you can have a 1 million mobility. So it's extraordinary. So basically the mobility, see, the point is like Newton's laws of motion. If you make an electron start to move, unless it collides with something and dissipates its energy, it'll move. So it is the mobility is restricted by the scattering processes. And much of it, there's of course intrinsic scattering processes associated with temperature because all atoms are vibrating in a solid, but the dominant part comes from defects and impurities. And that's why silicon needs to be made very clean and pure in order to achieve very high mobility to make it suitable for the silicon technology. TMDs are also very good materials and can have very high. But I wanted to give the complete answer that you can make other materials also. If you can make them very pure without any defects, you can achieve high mobility.
Again, it's a very general question, sir. What are the harmful effects of nanomaterials in near future?
In near future, let's say what are the harmful effects of nanomaterials? Any material has harmful effect, right? Copper. I mean, whoever has asked the question, I want that person to think for a moment. Copper, can it have harmful effect? If you say no, then you say that you didn't draw the way I drew up. Once I took copper cable and put it when I was very young and put it inside the plug point and got a huge shock. And that was, so copper can be harmful. You can electrocute me using copper. So it's a question of how you use it. Okay, but I didn't want to trivialize the matter. There is an issue that you have to know about nanomaterials. Nanomaterial size is typically so small that they can go through the biological barriers easily. This is the issue that people talk about, the danger of nanomaterial, because it can go across the biological barriers. Typically, when you get below 25 micron, it's too small and it can go through the pores of biological systems or biological protections and can be ingested by biological systems. And so one has to worry about it. And it's a very specialized topic of many experts studying it. I'm not an expert. So there can be adverse effect, and so we have to be careful. But even it's a question of knowing, understanding the risk and taking care of it. So I was trying to point out everything has some risk, but we need to understand what are the risks and how the risk comes about and how to mitigate that risk. And that is how every technology has flourished.
One more last question, sir. Actually, I know you have to go. Very simple question, sir. We can have materials. We can have materials which can actually switch its properties from hydrophilic to hydrophobic properties into each other. Can we have that kind of materials in which the hydrophilic properties can be switched over to hydrophobic?
It is thinkable. I mean, I often cannot think of examples, but I would not be surprised if such a paper exists, such work exists. Simply because of what you have to do, remember, the way it has to be done. I mean, if I am given this task, how will I think about it? The way I'll think about it is, of course, what I'm doing is to put some functional materials on top of a material, and that functional material end has the property of repelling water, doesn't like water. Let's say coating something with oil, essentially that. Now I need a material. So, but then I want to change its property. That means I need a phase transition material, which at one stage in one configuration has a hydrophobic end and in another configuration has a hydrophilic end, and I should be able to switch which end is pointing outward by giving light or temperature or some such thing so that I can flip it back and forth, making it hydrophilic or hydrophobic. So it is thinkable to achieve, but I do not know if it has been achieved or active.
So can we apply materials to capture water from atmosphere?
Oh, there is a lot of work going on in many different ways. In fact, I mean, this is all inspired by these beetles in the desert that go up on the top of the sand dune and put up their legs, and their legs have very fine structure, almost nanostructures, which are now the air passing through them the moisture condenses on those legs, and then they get their drops coming down, and that's how they get their source of water. And in fact, there are ideas of trying to get the technology to work in areas which doesn't have enough water, potable water. That's one of the technologies, but it's, I would say, commercially not yet viable, but prototypes exist, and those kind of technologies have been set up and shown to work. Yes.
In such beautiful way, you are actually explaining the giving the response of the queries of the undergraduate and postgraduate students. So more queries are coming.
We have some more time, a few more minutes if you want.
If you have 1 or 2 minutes, we can take
Sure,
1 or 2.
please. Please.
Yeah. So can carbon nanotubes technology or nanocarbon tube technology could be used to make lightweight spaceships to cover large distances in space?
I mean, surely the point is that actually these carbon materials are in various forms in composite and in composite forms of carbon are being used for lightweight applications because they provide additional strength and at the same time make the material much lighter weight. So definitely it will be used, and also it needs to be heat resistant. So it has to be some kind of composite material with which I don't know whether in rockets it is being used, but since in rocket technology, like in any aviation technology, other aviation technologies also, the weight is an extremely important criteria. I'm sure that it's being explored and being used for all I know.
Yeah. The last question, sir. Yeah. Is potency and stability of composite materials is less than pure materials?
Pardon?
Potency and stability.
Potency and stability.
Potential and stability of composite materials is less than pure materials. How would we compare the stability of composite materials and the pure materials? Like, for example, sir, we have the steel, we have the composite, and if you have the pure carbon or pure iron, like brass, pure, we compare with copper or zinc, something like that, sir.
Okay, so see that in general, I mean, first of all, one would not make a composite material if some property did not improve. Because the idea of making composite material from pure material is to improve the material strength. In general, composite material has enhancement of various kinds of crack resistance, and simply because what happens is that you make in a composite material, it becomes very anisotropic. So crack propagation and other things gets blocked. Okay, so that's the reason composite material in terms of mechanical properties have been used from even before they understood the science behind it. Okay, but there are many properties where a composite material is not a good idea. For example, if you want to conduct electrons, now if you have a composite material, precisely because the crack cannot propagate, also for similar reason the electron cannot propagate. Electron wants a very beautifully periodic system to be able to propagate. As I said, that even a defect in that pure material causes some distress to the electron. An electron is not able to move as well as it can. So electron movement would require very nice property. But that metal, if it doesn't have the mechanical strength, and you want to give it a mechanical strength, then you give something to it to provide it the material strength by making it composite, but where a large part of the metal is the one that will be carrying the electrons. So it's difficult to discuss this particular question without specific examples of which property we are talking about and what kind of material. Then one can give a more clear answer.
Actually, sir, we are receiving some more questions, but I would like to tell the participants, actually, those questions are more specific to the talk of Professor Ashok Kumar Ganguli and Professor Chari on water purification and the environmental issues. So we will ask those questions in those sessions, sir. So, sir, I would like to say thank you so much. And we are getting more compliments from the audience side, sir. And the Madam Vice Chancellor was much happy, sir, to see you again here in Jamia. And somehow she missed your number from her mobile. Now she took your number, mobile, email ID as well as full address.
Oh, yes.
So probably she will actually contact you. And she was very pleased to have you, sir, in this program. And in fact, she was actually attend your lecture nearly half an hour. Then she went for a meeting. Yeah.
My compliments, convey my compliments and congratulations to her to have put together such a fantastic team and for supporting you people for doing all this. It's really, I understand that there has to be very good alignment between the administration and the faculty and the students, all arms of a system. It's a composite system. And as a composite system, the university works well when all the components not only do their function very well, but also interface with other functions very well. And that's when the synergy comes. So that's a very good example of composite system that works so perfectly. And my congratulations to her in anticipation of the ranking that she alluded to. And that I'll be looking forward to and hearing about it. And compliment to you, Professor Ahmad, and your entire team and your colleagues, your dean, registrar, everybody, and the participants for putting together such a wonderful. It's been my pleasure, and hopefully things will become better and we'll meet in person.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much.
We will meet again. Have a nice day, sir.
Thank you. Take care and enjoy. Bye.
Thank you.
I take leave of you. Bye.
Dear participants, now we will have the keynote lecture, keynote session. And since actually we are, everyone is engaged from 10 o'clock till now, so we can have the break of 6 minutes, and then we will start the lecture of Professor Sarbajit Banerjee. So meanwhile, I can request the audience to please have some plenty of water, and if you have some 5-6 minutes work,